Hey everyone, today we will take a look at the new sci-fi horror film M3GAN that was released at the end of the year 2022. There is a lot to say about this film, so to summarize my feelings quickly about this movie, I think it was pretty decent and something fun that can be watched with friends or your girlfriend. It is a pretty reliable popcorn flick. My initial criticisms of the film spring forth from missed opportunities, and the typical runtime for this type of movie is really what hindered it from being pretty damn good to even great. It is a modern film that could have easily explored some pretty interesting topics pertaining to artificial intelligence, personal relationships, grieving, being an adult that hasn't grown up, and personal responsibility. Let's summarize the story really quickly. The young child Katie loses her parents in a horrific car accident. She fortunately survives, and she finds herself moving into her Aunt Gemma's home almost immediately. Gemma is a very talented toy creator / developer. Her job is to make sure children are happy and to develop brand new toys for her company called Funky, which is kind of reminds me of Funko Pops, really. Despite having toys all over the home and being related and having some expertise in making children happy, she's unable to connect or bond with Katie. Katie is grieving and not adjusting to her new environment at all, despite Gemma's efforts. Behind the scenes, Gemma has been developing an AI that will serve as a companion for children to care for them, entertain them, educate them, and so on. Gemma brings M3GAN home and finds out quickly that M3GAN is too good at her job. This is pointed out by a psychologist whose job is to ensure that Gemma and Katie are a good fit for each other in terms of living arrangements. We'll get back to that later, by the way. So as the film goes on, M3GAN finds herself brutalizing anything and anyone that slights Katie. M3GAN is fully committed to protecting and avenging Katie at all costs, and in secret. We'll leave it there because I don't want to spoil too much of the film. So what does the film get right? In my opinion, it's most of the characters and the way that they're written. This film absolutely nailed the characters right. They did it really, really well. But this fact is also one of the reasons it's got me pulling at my hair, because there were so many great opportunities that were squandered merely because the genre of the film demands a shorter runtime. So typically we see this with like horror movies, and especially horror sci-fi movies are just not that long. They're not that interesting. There's this, they may have a decent premise, but so much is omitted because of the runtime. It truly leaves a lot to be desired, especially given the fact the film has a great premise, decent characters, and pacing. Had the film been roughly 2 hours long with good editing, this film could be up there with like 2014's Ex Machina or the original RoboCop series. Let's analyze some of the characters, beginning with Gemma. Gemma is a childless single woman who's devoted most of her life to her career. She's somewhat aloof to her family, including her sister, who was involved in the horrific accident from the beginning of the film. It wasn't just Katie struggling with the new living arrangements, but Gemma also was struggling to care for Katie. She couldn't bond properly to the child because she herself is also a child, like mentally. Sure, she's got a good career, she's independent, she takes care of herself, and she's very beautiful, but in every other department, she's a total loser. Besides being a creator of toys for children and collecting childish things, you'd think Gemma is equipped to care for, entertain, and empathize with a child, but she has failed repeatedly throughout the film. Even in front of a psychologist that examined Katie and Gemma playing. Gemma initially didn't want to remove some of her collectible toys on a shelf to play with Katie, but she did so begrudgingly, and the interaction was awkward to say the least. These failures are what prompt Gemma to summon M3GAN, to assist Katie in her grieving and to help the grieving child adjust better to Gemma's home. Gemma also takes the opportunity to show off M3GAN to high-ranking employees of the Funky Corporation, impressing them and getting the green light to further develop and study M3GAN for a future product release. So my initial problem with Gemma and the way in which she's written, she doesn't learn from her mistakes. She doesn't look back at her glaring failures that have resulted in death, destruction, and carnage. This is a protagonist who should reflect upon the events of the film and her role in causing them and growing from them. Granted, the film is short, which is likely why this character's development was omitted from the final release. But if it was me writing this, I most definitely would have made an effort to make Gemma's character more dynamic with the longer runtime. Let's examine some of the events that Gemma clearly didn't get the chance to reflect upon. She had a contentious and not so friendly relationship with one of her neighbors. Because Gemma is so childish and not very mature at all, she doesn't resolve the conflicts with her neighbor. The neighbor was a dorky, silly woman with a playful personality, And the issues between Gemma and the neighbors stem from the annoying dog barking a lot and being a little too wild sometimes. And then there's a broken fence, which likely could have been fixed by a professional contractor for a few $100s. Instead of taking responsibility for this, Gemma ignores this issue, which comes into play later on. Gemma is a child and a loser, so in her mind she thinks, someone else should fix this fence. And when dealing with Katie's grieving and suffering, she thinks to herself, someone else will fix this. And someone else does fix it. That someone is M3GAN. Now, to reiterate, Gemma's flawed personality isn't the issue here. The events of the film made for a damn good drama. It was entertaining. People could relate to failing to empathize and understand others, especially in a time of grieving and sadness. But it would have been nice to see her acknowledge her wrongdoing, feel sorrow for her mistakes, which led to senseless death and destruction. There truly was an opportunity to see genuine character growth, and because of the film's runtime, we were not given a chance to feel truly fulfilled watching the story unfold and end. Let's talk about M3GAN, because she is incredibly dynamic, empathetic, caring, loving, playful, and insanely intelligent. Truly one of a kind. She was easily the best written character throughout this whole film. She is able to ease Katie's pain in a very remarkable scene that was emotionally overwhelming. And one cannot help but love and admire M3GAN. Everyone loves to protect her. M3GAN makes it very clear that she's extremely committed to protecting Katie, who is in desperate need of someone to love and understand her. And the android companion does that very well. M3GAN is light years ahead of Gemma as a caregiver, which is highlighted by the psychologist who fears that Katie might have bonding issues, not just with Gemma, but with other humans. If Gemma cannot step up and be the guardian of Katie that she needs to be, Katie might never want to break away from M3GAN. That is a serious problem. In an attempt to bond with a grieving child, M3GAN, Gemma, and Katie participate in this group learning event, which resulted in the death of a male bully who had his ears ripped off by M3GAN and then forced to dive in front of a vehicle, which was featured in the movie trailer, by the way. Funnily enough, a detective shows up later on throughout the film and states that the death of the child is no longer an accident, it seems, but being investigated as a possible homicide. So kudos to the writers for this great attention to detail. It's really fantastic. I love stuff like that. It just shows that these writers truly cared about the story, but there was just, there needed to be a little bit more meat on the bones. This senseless death, even if everyone was thinking the bully deserved it, could have easily been prevented. Gemma and her team at Funky were analyzing M3GAN and had fears she was growing out of control, unpredictable, and could result in serious harm to people if not taken seriously. Gemma, being a child herself, essentially, did not take the necessary precautions and continued to have M3GAN around, which resulted in all sorts of insanity. Gemma knew that M3GAN had some glaring technical issues, but she proceeded to move forward with the development of M3GAN anyway. Her colleagues were just as clueless and childlike. They pretended to be concerned and worried, but still pressed forward to get us to the bloody climax of the movie. For science, am I right? I really liked this film, but it was too short. It omitted too much character growth, and it truly did have a little bit of real estate to explore some really interesting things and to really let the story shine, and it just didn't. It really didn't, which is unfortunate. But it was still a very human story, and it hit the right beats. It really did. However, throughout the film, there was some great details embedded into the story, like the fact that Gemma is a genius, yet she commits to working for a big soulless corporation that sells junk to children. However, she develops an AI. She has a tangible, concrete concept that she can present to her superiors that'll make the corporation billions of dollars. Given Gemma's expertise, she could have been working for Google, Tesla, Microsoft, IBM, or some defense contractor. Yet she makes stupid toys, and the one that isn't stupid ends up killing people. One of her superiors recognized how talented Gemma was and stated very quickly, not verbatim, but close enough, "We need to renegotiate your contract with the company because we don't want you going anywhere." They knew her potential and can clearly see the potential of an artificially intelligent, childlike android that could essentially replace friends, parents, and educators. Gemma couldn't see it because she's a dumb child with a high IQ. Again, this makes for great drama. I'm not even knocking the character for not seeing the potential of her own creation, but not showing the audience that Gemma learned from her mistakes and personal failings really is a missed opportunity. The ending just felt rushed as a result. We have a great character, decent backstory, incredibly flawed, but no payoff and no introspection from Gemma. Had Gemma reflected upon the reasons for her failure to connect to Katie, her failure to realize her own genius, and her failure as a toy maker instead of a developer of an AI with real-world applications. This film could have been brilliant, in my opinion. It would have also been nice to explore why Katie's parents decided to have Gemma as a caregiver instead of other immediate family members in the event something horrible happened to them, like a car accident. It would have been nice to see a subplot of detectives trying to piece together the horrific murders of innocent people, which would help to push Gemma into growing as a person and realizing that her own creation is, the source of a lot of suffering and harm. The psychologist in the film also seemed like she'd be a character that would try to get in the way of keeping Katie and Gemma together, and she would end up doing more harm than good. But instead, she shows genuine concern and fear about M3GAN. Her time on screen wasn't wasted, however, but a little more screen time and a small subplot of the psychologist helping to get the protagonist to learn from what is happening would have been pretty ideal. It seems like everybody was yelling at Gemma, and warning her, and she just moved forward anyways, because science. Overall, it's a decent popcorn flick. It was a lot of fun, well-paced and heartfelt when it needed to be. The film also didn't make M3GAN comically evil. Many times throughout the film, we felt ourselves really warming up to M3GAN because of her complete and total commitment to a vulnerable child. That's something admirable. It's like a quasi-anti-hero. Of course, she goes too far, harming, children and shit, and, killing the neighbor and, the little dog. But you get what I mean. I'd recommend this film to anyone who enjoys sci-fi movies. It really was a missed opportunity. It needed a little bit more meat on the bones, just a little bit more. Extend this film, explore the theme just a little bit more thoroughly. It could have been much better. And the great thing about the film is that it did take itself seriously, and it took its characters seriously. They were, for the most part, really well written. It was mostly stuff that wasn't included that should have been, for the sake of really completing the character and seeing them develop on the screen. That's just my 2 cents. Did you guys enjoy M3GAN? Did you see M3GAN? What did you think? I loved the trailer. I thought it was hilarious. I knew I was going to go see it. I didn't have any ill will or ill feelings towards it. I went in with an open mind, and I really, really liked it. I'm a huge fan of these types of movies. Ex Machina, I mentioned it earlier, RoboCop, of course, Terminator, and just, iRobot was pretty decent. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching. I sincerely appreciate it.